a major shakeup for the Seattle Mariners. The M's fired longtime manager Scott Servais.
This was his 9th season at the helm. The decision comes as the Mariners went 1-8 in their latest road trip, capped by getting swept by the LA Dodgers last night in LA. On June 18th, the Mariners led the AL West by 10 games, but currently they're 5 games behind the Houston Astros. Former Mariners catcher Dan Wilson will take over as manager starting tomorrow. We have team coverage on this developing story. Senior reporter Chris Daniels is standing by with reaction and questions about the future of the franchise. But we want to start with sports director Niik Taman. Nico.
Well, hey there, Mary. And everything you and Preston just said about that recent stretch is why this happened today. There's plenty of blame to go around for this summer slide. This is not the fault of Scott Servais alone. Far from that. But it became clear, at least to Jerry Dipoto, the Mariners needed a new voice, and it was Scott's voice that led them back to the playoffs in 2022. But since then, they fell a game short of the playoffs last year and watched that commanding lead in the West evaporate this summer. Now, these championship windows can be fleeting, and that's why the time was now to make a move. And that's why Jerry Dipoto made today what he calls the most difficult day of his professional career.
On June 19th, we were 10 games up in our division, and we wake up this morning and we find ourselves at 500, 5 games back. And the last 2 months have been very difficult for a lot of people. And, as I said, I think our team, the way our team has played recently, it's gone beyond just struggling to play offense. And I think we just need to get back to believing in who we are as players and who we are as an organization.
Now, what made it even more difficult is Dipoto says Servais learned of his dismissal by way of a crawl on the bottom of the screen on a news channel. He wanted to meet with Scott in person to deliver the news, but that went out the window when Scott found out via TV. Now the reins go to a Mariner fan favorite, Dan Wilson, to lead the charge going forward. We're going to dive deeper into that new leader of the Mariners and why he may be around longer than you think. That's coming up in a little while on the KOMO Sports Desk. Mary?
Nico, thank you. Well, let's head out to T-Mobile Park in Soto. Dan Wilson will be on the bench tomorrow as the Mariners start a 3-game series against the San Francisco Giants. Then they host the Tampa Bay Rays. After that, they hit the road for a 3-game series against the LA Angels.
The Mariners' managerial change comes during a difficult time for the Mariners off the field, too. KOMO senior reporter Chris Daniels continues our team coverage with that part of the story. Chris?
Yeah, Preston, the Mariners are right now believed to be hemorrhaging millions of dollars from the collapse of their TV network, Root Sports, after the loss of the rights to the Seattle Kraken and the Portland Trail Blazers. President Katie Griggs, she walked away in July, and now those problems in the front office are being equaled on the field. It wasn't so long ago the Mariners were on the rise with a playoff win, the first in 21 years. Scott Servais leading the celebration with team revenue near the top of the league. But those champagne showers have seemingly dried up.
You feel bad for the guy, but at the same time, it's a business, and sometimes you just got to make business decisions.
Servais's firing comes at a time of great unknown for the M's. A team once up 10 games in June has seen those tridents turn upside down. Now 5 games back of a playoff spot at a time when every franchise ticket sale and every bit of TV revenue matters.
This just kind of feels like the start of a lot of changes down there at T-Mobile Park.
Dave Softy Mahler and Dick Fain are longtime sports talk radio hosts who fear the firing is part of a greater internal problem.
They've gone from legitimate division championship contender to pretty much out.
I think as far as equity with the fan base and credibility in this community, this is the lowest point I've ever seen this franchise.
Maybe we make further changes. Maybe this is the only big change we need to make.
That answer is likely weeks away if the M's don't right their sinking ship. And that's why those problems on the field are magnified, knowing that the franchise here at T-Mobile Park is dealing with those financial issues. In a certain respect, they really need to return to those good vibes from just a couple of years ago. That's the story live at the T. I'm Chris Daniels, KOMO News.
All right, thanks, Chris. A major shakeup for the Mariners today. The team fired manager Scott Servais. Servais was already in the hot seat after the team just missed the playoffs last year, and the calls for him to be fired only intensified this year as the team blew a 10-game lead in their division. Our sports director, Niik Taman, joins us tonight. Nico, former Seattle catcher Dan Wilson will now take over for Servais, and I know it has been an incredibly busy day. It's going to be exciting to see them take on the Giants with Wilson in this new spot, and I'm sure fans are going to be really interested to see how all this goes down with not that many games left in the season.
Well, that's the idea of why they made the move right now. The idea that, yeah, there are 34 games left and you're 5 games back. It's not the 10-game lead they had back in June, but the reality is this team has made up 5-game deficits in 30-some-odd game stretches before. This is very doable. It's not something I'd exactly bet my house on, but it's doable. And so that's the reason you make the move right now, certainly on the heels of that rough road trip, losing 8 of 9. And it's a tough decision anytime you have to let somebody go from their job. But the timing of doing it right now is, in theory, a different voice, that being of Dan Wilson, maybe has enough of an impact for this team to make a run down the stretch and perhaps win the AL West after all.
So at the end of the day, they have to win the AL West, because if they don't win the AL West, they're too far out with the wild card right now, so they can't get in that way. I mean, that's pretty much how this is going to come out, right?
Yeah, there's about a 2-game difference, but that ebbs and flows. And yeah, the AL West is the division with the worst records. The Astros in first place, just a few games above 500. The Mariners is second with an even 500 record there. So, and that's the idea here, is that, the Mariners had that 10-game lead in June, and it didn't matter what button that Scott Servais pressed, it didn't seem to work. And so that's why Jerry Dipoto said repeatedly on his call with myself included and other local reporters that it was time for a different voice, that this team was telling them they needed something different. Not like literally saying we need a new manager, but in their actions and the way they played, showing Jerry that he had to make something. And that's how we get this landmark move with Scott Servais no longer being the Mariners manager, a new manager for the first time since 2016.
Nico, I know, the coach has been getting a lot of flack before today. A lot of people online talking about how he needed to be fired and making these late, game calls where they bring in a certain relief pitcher and then they start hitting off of him. I mean, at the same time, I think there's only so much you can blame on the coach when the players, just getting some, bad moments in there. You can't, necessarily fault one of your excellent pitchers for getting in there and then guy happens to crank the ball. I mean, there are just these things that just seem like a snowball of just a lot of bad moments that just came into this one moment, and now he's off the team,
Yeah, Scott isn't out there swinging the bat, is he, Preston? But here's the deal. Realistically, the blame can be spread among so many parties within the Mariners organization. Yeah, sure, part of it is Scott. He's not perfect, but who is? Part of it goes on the front office for the roster construction. Part of it goes on the players, obviously, as well. They're the ones out there swinging the bat and doing everything else. So it's really kind of spread out. But what is the one thing, if you are Jerry Dipoto, that you can do right now to try and make a last-ditch effort to try and save this season? The easiest way, even if it wasn't easy, it was certainly difficult because they are very close with Scott, but you can't fire all the players, right? You can't go back and start trading everybody left and right, especially after the trade deadline. But the one thing you can do is have a new message, a new voice. And that's why you're seeing the mid-season, even if it's late season move of removing Scott Servais. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it's the one thing that they can do that gives this team a chance to perhaps make a playoff push. We'll see if it happens. Dan Wilson, Dipoto was quick to say, is the manager moving forward. He is not an interim manager. What that means is, certainly if Dan does well, he's just going to continue on as the Mariners manager. So that ups the stakes. We'll see how it shakes out. But yeah, blame to be spread around here. The managerial change is the one thing that you can realistically do to perhaps definitely change the message, but perhaps change your fortune over these last 34 games.
Nico, before you go here, we just got a couple of seconds here, but I was just going to say the games moving forward. They got the Giants coming in town. They're going to have to face the Yankees. I mean, they have some decent opponents ahead of them, Texas Rangers being one of them as well. Me looking at the Mariners and watching them very closely for just the last couple of weeks and seeing the momentum when Arozarena joined the team and they were jumping around and, doing their circles in the outfield. They were pumped and really excited about this. I really hope, if anything, when Dan Wilson hits the field tomorrow, that these guys are feeling that same kind of momentum, that rah-rah feeling, and get out there and really push for these games. So they got some tough opponents coming up, but I think the bottom line is they've got some excellent players on that team, including Justin Turner and these guys out there, Julio Rodriguez. And I think if this team comes together and builds that momentum again, I really think they can pull it together. And even though the Astros are as good as they are, they've got to bring that momentum in. And I really think they can make that playoff push if they just get out of their heads a little bit and get out there and hit the field, and then just not just try to win, but try to have fun at the same time.
Without a doubt, the talent is there. It's the same talent, certainly even, I honestly think, better than the team that went to the playoffs 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so the talent is there. They have just massively, especially offensively, underperformed. The pitching has been amazing. Lights out. It's been awesome. The rotation is, I would still contend, the best in baseball. They just don't have a lot of help there. So, yeah, with the right voice and perhaps a difference in message is all you need. We'll find out. I can't wait to be providing us live reports tomorrow from T-Mobile Park as they get ready to take on the Giants. But yeah, to your point, this is a good team. You know, Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh, all those guys are immensely talented. Can they turn it around? Can they heat up over the last 5 weeks of this season? That'll determine whether or not we're talking about October baseball or not, and really, truly chart the course of this franchise for years to come. So it's going to be perhaps, we've said it for a while now, perhaps one of the most impactful stretches of Mariners baseball that we've seen in years. A tough decision to get rid of Scott Servais today. One that they felt like they had to do to, again, shake things up. We'll see how it turns out, starting with that Giants game tomorrow.
Nico, I'm being told to wrap it. I just have to bring this up. I understand they fired their hitting coach, too. Is that right?
Yeah, Jarret DeHart, the hitting coach, he's been with the organization since 2018. He was let go as well. And we pointed out earlier, both guys found out by seeing the little news crawl on the bottom of the MLB network or one of the TV networks. Yeah. So it was tough, yeah.
I think what I like to see, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, is that, I get hitting the home runs. I get being out there and, and swinging for the fences. But what I would love to see the Mariners do more than anything is just placing the ball strategically in spots and just getting on base and just knocking in the runs and just doing it one by one by one and winning those games like that. I think it's going to really potentially help them moving forward, and just to win these crucial games moving forward. And I think they might have a chance. It's just part of my thinking here, but I think it could help,
Yeah, the mantra has always been create traffic on the base pass. Don't strike out. Just get on base somehow. Singles, walks, whatever it is. It just, until this point, hasn't been consistently done. Let's see if that changes.
I've got faith in these guys, man, and I know you do.
Me too. I hope so.
Okay. Thanks, Nico. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that brings us to tonight's Pulse Poll. This is the question we're asking this evening. Do you think a change of manager is a good move for the Mariners? This is a live look at the results coming in tonight. 67% say yes, 19% say no, 14% say depends on the replacement. To vote right now, scan the QR code here on your screen. We'll be sure to bring you the latest results later in the show. We're going to take a quick break. We're back right after this.